my mind.
Welcome to First Time Watching. The Ugly Stepsister is one of the best new horror movies out there, but after watching it, I really wanted to know what went on behind the scenes. So keep watching, and you'll find out which talking body part the director based the movie on, and during which scene people actually puked in the theater. Spoiler, it's not the one you'd expect. But before we dive into the facts, here's a quick movie recap to refresh our memories on what The Ugly Stepsister is all about. Elvira dreams about kissing the prince with her dry, crusty-ass lips, but she's way too ugly to even be remotely his type. After her mom marries some old fart, he dies and leaves our duckling's family drowning in debt, along with a brand new stepdaughter who's fine as hell. Now, as luck would have it, the prince is on the market for an underage virgin bride he can plow into oblivion and spend the rest of his life with, until they eventually grow to resent each other, and he starts visiting women of the night just to feel alive again. Both Elvira and her new stepsister, Cinderella, sign up. But since Elvira looks like a thumb with teeth, she undergoes every surgery imaginable to look halfway decent, and even swallows a tapeworm to drop some of that baby fat. When she finds out Cinderella has been secretly letting the stable boy park his eggplant in her perfect little peach, Elvira thinks her biggest competition is officially out of the running. On the night of the royal selection, the prince has a full-on boner for Elvira until Cinderella shows up and steals his attention. She dips out before midnight and leaves behind her shoe, triggering the world's weirdest scavenger hunt. Elvira, who's giving off serious golem energy by this point, chops off part of her foot to make it fit the glass slipper and drags herself toward the prince. But Cinderella beats her to it, pretends to be a born-again virgin, and wins the prize. They live happily ever after while Elvira and her younger sister ride off into the distance to get as far away from this hot mess as possible. Now that we've refreshed our memory, it's time for some facts. Director Emily Blichfeld's original concept was a surreal short about a lonely woman and her talking vulva. It was weird, personal, and explored body shame in a brutally honest way. That early work morphed into The Ugly Stepsister, keeping the obsession with physicality and internalized self-hate as the general theme. In 2015, Blichfeld saw David Cronenberg's movie, Crash, a film where people eroticize car accidents. The way Cronenberg used physical pain as emotional language deeply affected her. It gave her the inspiration to use flesh and injury as a way to talk about inner trauma. From that point on, she leaned hard into body horror. The film takes visual inspiration from 1970s Eastern European fairy tales, like Three Wishes for Cinderella. It's all snowy woods, stone staircases, and eerie pastels, pretty on the surface, but unsettling underneath. These old films didn't sugarcoat magic. They let darkness seep into the frame. The Ugly Stepsister carries that same haunting charm. The director says she didn't create Elvira. Elvira just randomly showed up in her thoughts. The character formed naturally in her head, angry, ashamed, and starved for love. Her pain and obsession with beauty weren't manufactured. They were felt. That authenticity is why Elvira feels so real. One of the most disturbing scenes involves a pair of beauty workers sewing thick lashes into Elvira's eyelids. Blichfeld insisted on practical effects to give the scene weight and texture. She explains, "It's often the older movies that have practical effects. Things don't move smoothly or perfectly like CGI. But this uncanniness, those tiny quirks and movement pull the audience into the illusion, making the details look horrifically real." The terrifying clamp used to reshape Elvira's nose wasn't fantasy. It's based on early 1900s rhinoplasty tools. These contraptions were real, crude, and painful. In the film, the snap of the device isn't just shocking, it symbolizes the moment Elvira breaks for beauty. Honestly, it makes Botox look like a walk in the park. Elvira takes matters into her own hands by swallowing a parasite to slim down. It's gross, desperate, and exactly the point. Beauty isn't magical in this story. It's invasive, consuming her from the inside. A literal inner demon she chose to impress a prince. For much of the film, the sound is barely there, just the hum of wind or the crackle of a candle. But when things turn violent, the noise hits hard, snapping bones, squishing tissue, tearing skin. These sudden spikes in sound make the body horror hit 10 times harder. Your ears flinch before your stomach does. Alma rarely speaks, but her presence is powerful. She watches everything Elvira does, and her silent concern cuts deeper than words. In a world full of judgmental women, Alma is one of the few who doesn't push Elvira to change. during its midnight premiere. One viewer vomited during the scene where they broke the nose. I would have suspected the tapeworm scene to get the job done, but the people with weak stomachs were long gone by then. Others, reportedly, left the screening pale and shaken. Whether that's praise or warning depends on your stomach. Gen Z and millennial women resonated with its raw honesty and feminist themes. Older viewers were more split. Some called it brilliant. Others found it unnecessary or disgusting. The generational divide speaks volumes about changing beauty standards. This film hits hardest if you've ever been told you're not enough. The idea started during Blichfeld's film school days and took nearly a decade to become a full-length feature. Funding, rewriting, international collaboration. It was a long, uphill climb, but the final product feels deeply personal and obsessively crafted. The film premiered at Sundance in the midnight section, then traveled to Berlin to hit the festivals. It won audience awards and sparked walkouts, always a good sign for horror. Critics were split, but the film was never ignored. It's the kind of movie that sticks with you, even if you hate it. Yes, there's gore, but behind the torn skin and blood is a story about how far women go to meet expectations. The pressure to be beautiful is more terrifying than any monster. Elvira doesn't get cursed. She chooses this pain, which makes it even scarier. In the original fairy tale, both the sisters cut off their own toes and heels, and a dove told the prince that they were trying to trick him, so they are punished by birds who peck out their eyes. Thus, the main difference is that the tale punishes them for their cruelty, while the movie punishes them for trying to be loved. There's nudity in The Ugly Stepsister, but the most explicit shots are done by doubles. The lead actors contribute strong visual performances without exposing themselves beyond their comfort level. Blichfeld cites filmmaker Walerian Borowczyk as a big influence. His movies are surreal, sexy, and creepy as hell, exactly the tone The Ugly Stepsister aims for. He wasn't afraid to mix beauty with discomfort. Blichfeld auditioned over 500 actresses in Norway over 6 months before finding her lead, Leah Myron. She immediately saw Elvira come to life on screen with Leah's blend of emotional depth, physicality, and dark sense of humor. Marcel Ziskind used tight framing and cold lighting to make everything feel intimate and suffocating. You're always too close to Elvira. Her skin, her breath, her pain. It's beautiful, but it doesn't let you breathe. The production chose actual historical locations in Poland, Gołachów Castle, and the vast, decaying Luby Abbey. These weren't just pretty backdrops. They brought age, decay, and atmosphere to every scene. These locations were also brutally cold and hard to film in. According to the crew, some interiors reached below freezing temperatures. It's not just acting, it's actual suffering on camera. The costume team got advice from Lady Amanda Harlech, a longtime muse for Karl Lagerfeld. She helped blend historical style with eerie flair. The result, dresses that feel regal and wrong at the same time. Norway, Poland, Sweden, and Denmark all pitched in to make it happen. This international backing helped it reach festivals across Europe and the US. It's basically the Eurovision of body horror. Most stories about female beauty standards point their fingers at men, but in The Ugly Stepsister, the most damaging expectations come from other women. Elvira is constantly shaped, judged, and hurt by her mother, her beauticians, and even herself. Men are nearly absent from the narrative, and when they do appear, they're voiceless. This choice flips the typical fairy tale dynamic. It shows how damaging standards can live within women, passed down from generation to generation. It's not about evil queens, it's about everyday rituals of control dressed up as care. This tightly choreographed horror film leans heavily on precise staging and special effects, especially in its intense body horror, moments like the eyelash stitching, nose clamp, and tapeworm extraction scenes. Every reaction, movement, and camera angle was meticulously planned to maximize emotional impact and ensure safety. However, actors like Leah Myron, who played Elvira, and Flo Fagerli as Alma are praised for their deeply instinctive physical performances. So, while the script didn't necessarily call for improvisations, the actors' emotional and physical authenticity added an unpredictable, improvised energy to intense scenes. Blichfeld didn't grow up with the Disney princesses. She watched darker versions from Grimm and Czech folklore, where love wasn't guaranteed and magic had a price. From the corsets and carriages, you might guess it's set in the late 1800s, but then the dreamy synth soundtrack rolls in, and you're suddenly in a 1970s dreamscape. The production design blends centuries, creating a timeless, eerie quality. It doesn't feel like history. It feels like a memory someone had after a bad fever. This form of time blending makes the story feel relevant no matter when you watch it. The pressure to be beautiful never really changes. By ignoring one fixed era, the film comments on how deep-rooted and eternal these expectations are. The Ugly Stepsister scores a whopping 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the critics say that The Ugly Stepsister is a critically daring and definitely a cult hit, praised for its visceral visual storytelling, emotional performance, and bold subversion of a classic fairy tale. Angela Carter is known for stories like The Bloody Chamber, and she rewrote fairy tales with feminist bite, erotic weirdness, and gothic flair. Blechfeld's film does exactly the same, but with more blood and less subtlety. Like Carter, she uses old stories to expose how female identity is built, broken, and reshaped, often painfully. But where Carter used metaphors, The Ugly Stepsister goes literal. Self-mutilation replaces transformation, tapeworms replace magic. It's not dreamy. It's dirty. Still, both artists ask the same questions. What does it cost to be desirable? And who's actually paying? For horror fans, this film is like a treasure hunt. The peeling skin and slow facial transformations echo The Fly. The oppressive atmosphere and adolescent shame, total Carrie vibes. Even the clinical beauty tools nod to Cronenberg's Dead Ringers. Blechfeld doesn't just mimic, she remixes. These references aren't just for show. They support the emotional core of the film. If you're tuned into horror history, every frame feels like a callback. And if you're not, you'll just think it's creepily original, because it is. The movie takes one of the most iconic parts of Cinderella, the glass slipper, and turns it into a metaphor. The prince doesn't care who Elvira is or what she's endured. He just checks if her foot fits the shoe. It's the ultimate objectification. You're only the one if your body matches the mold. The scene calls out how beauty standards work. They're not about love or worth. They're about fitting literally into impossible expectations. And there you have it, 30 facts from behind the blood, lace, and lashes of The Ugly Stepsister. If you learned something new, or if you're now emotionally scarred just like Elvira, go ahead and hit that like button. Got a favorite fact or moment I missed in the video? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wildly unsettling corners of cinema.